Hello out there. Today we're taking a look at the Dicamus from MMC. This is a third-party version of Roadbuster as seen in IDW. You can see I've got them all stickered up because to me, not that I don't care about Roadbuster, but I'm much more interested in it as sort of an armored Mugen Calibur Dorvack homage. And for my collection, that's what this will be. So I've got the Repro Labels kit on here, along with some vintage decals from a Mugen Calibur model kit, and I'm kind of at a halfway point. I'm not sure if I want to put more on or not. I like the way it looks, but there are still some places that I'd like to put some on, so I don't know. Anyway, he's close enough, and I really enjoy the Generations version. Again, it has stickers that came with it, which I know not everybody was going to dig, but for me was perfect because, again, nothing against Roadbuster, but what I really enjoy is the fact that in whatever year this came out, there was a brand new Dorvack-inspired toy on the shelves. And as much as I like him, even better for me is the Generations Whirl, because this is straight up the design from Dorvack. So yeah, I'd love to have a huge version of this that fits in better with my collection, but till then, still like him. But yeah, so here's a good size comparison. I mean, this has been out for a while. I'm sure you've probably seen it, but there you go if you haven't. And of course, let's put Sandstorm there as well. One of my favorite Transformers toys of all time. I think it's amazingly engineered. Obviously, the look is something that you're either going to be into or not. But for me, man, look at those wheels. This thing is awesome. But I digress. Point is, there's Dicamus. There's his vehicle mode. It's big. It's chunky. I've also done some painting, like this silver plate, this diamond plate here normally isn't silver, that's just orange. So yeah, if you get one, it won't be quite as pretty as mine, but if you put in some work, you can definitely do that. Now, if you know and love Roadbuster, you know that he was naked before, got to have his weapons. So we've got his bumper, which is, of course, two sort of bazookas, and then his machine gun, and just to show the Generations version isn't all bad, you got to admit they did it better. I mean, look at this loadout. Look at all these weapons. Amazing. But there we go. There's vehicle mode. Nice sort of rubberish tires. I do appreciate that. And overall, it is a great looking vehicle. Not exactly like the Mugen Calibur, but very reminiscent. You know, you can see it there, and for me, it definitely evokes the spirit in a way that I appreciate. It's also roughly 1/24 scale, which is kind of how I think about it. If we bring in sort of a soldier there, he's under construction, but he's from the Kotobukiya Hexagear line. But yeah, you can see, you can imagine him riding in this. It fits. Now the transformation is really pretty easy on this guy, but honestly, I'm going to refer you to another review if you're interested in that transformation. But to be honest with you, you could pick this thing up and transform it. There's very little that is tricky. Really, these panels coming up before you do any of the rest of the front, that's pretty much all you need to know. Everything else is very simple. So we're going to edit and just pop on over to robot mode. Absolutely beautiful robot mode. For what it's worth, you can rotate the bottom part of the legs like this. If you prefer having the larger feet in front, like so. Pretty good look. Can't go wrong either way. I do prefer this way though. Alright, so here is this huge brute compared to the Hashtag version. You can see in terms of color, I do prefer the color of this one, although they look much more similar on camera than they do in real life. This one's kind of a deeper orange. I do prefer this, but this is fine. This is totally fine. And either way, they're not the same as the Calibur. But you can see there's a lot of similarities here in terms of the way that they're laid out, and overall, I dig both of these. Put him with Whirl here. Now obviously, scale goes out the window. I wish this was, I mean, this should be twice as big as Dicamus to be even close to in scale. The helicopters are huge after all. And of course here is Sandstorm, so you can get an idea, you know, if you want to have your Springer with them, how they will look together. I think it scales pretty well for, you know, a deluxe size-based 132 scale Transformer collection. And last but not least, just for consistency's sake, here is our 124 scale Soldier, who, you know, again, you can imagine piloting this mech, and if you look at a reference from the show, this would be not an inappropriate scale. So, again, as a armored caliber, love it. Works perfect. Totally dig it. And why not, while I'm at it, this is a 172 scale caliber model my son and I built, just so you can see the actual you know, original design compared to Dicamus here. And you know, the color scheme here is entirely our own. We were kind of just making up, like, this is just the army version as opposed to the hero version that the guy drives in the show. And yeah, same universe. Now, all headcanon aside, as a figure, it is pretty nice. It's very beefy, and obviously, if you are after a bigger Roadbuster for your Generations collection, this will work fine. He does have a alternate head that you may prefer that looks much more like the comic version. This is much more vintage, though, so I dig that. A couple of things I have to note about this toy, because I think they are so cool. His hands, it does have articulated fingers. Each one is articulated just, you know, once at the base, and then it has a thumb that's on a ball joint. But one thing I love about this is his hand, if you fold it up, and this is part of the transformation to vehicle mode, if you fold it up like this, it actually has this shield that goes around it that turns it into a, you know, a mace. His fist becomes a mace, which is a really cool integration of a gimmick. I dig that a lot. It's really cool. Now, in terms of articulation, everything is exactly as hindered as you'd think it would be. There's plenty of joints, like this arm can slide up and down. It's actually on a double ball joint, but this bumps into it, this bumps into it. This thing itself can rotate back and forth, but, you know, it takes everything it's got to kind of stay out of its own way. The legs are well articulated. There's actually like a million swivels because of the thigh swivel, and then there's also the you know, swivel there. The double jointed knee, it's pretty fantastic. The feet can rock side by side depending on which way you want the leg to go. You can also get toe articulation from the larger foot. Double elbow bend. The head's on a ball joint. But again, everything runs into itself. Like, for instance, there's a waist swivel, but it has this plate that kind of comes off of it. So literally everything is hampered. Now, that doesn't mean it's badly articulated, and I don't really care too much about the articulation, but it may bother you when you get this figure. It'll take a while to get it into proper poses, I think, for most people. Again, I should note that this has the repro labels on it, and I've also done things like these pistons here in the elbow and the back of the knee. I painted those. Those do not come painted. Similarly, there's a diamond plate underneath the chest. This will be orange. It's a very plain figure. If you look at a standard review of Dicamus, there's not a lot of detail. There's not a lot going on with him. He's very, very plain. So, you know, you don't have to sticker him up the way that I did to emulate the Mugen Calibur, but I would definitely recommend getting, you know, some kind of customization going on there just to make him look a little prettier. Now, the secret to any look is the accessories. So here he is with his full weapon complement. The rifle, again, repro labels. It's much more plain normally. And he does have his two bazookas up there on his shoulders. And ultimately, out of the box, this is how he's armed up. But I prefer, at this point, I have just stolen the weapons from my Hasbro version. And what I prefer to do is take this one, put it on here, take this one, and there's actually a modular port on the rifle, which is pretty cool. Just attach it down there like that. And then I take the missile pod from the Generations version and the ion blaster, whatever it is, and that, for me, works much better. Now I feel like he's truly armed up in a way that befits a machine of war out on the battlefield, engaging in combat. Yeah, it looks good, you know, and for me, it's like if you imagine the soldiers kind of using him as you know, the way they use a tank advancing undercover while he lays down heavy suppressing fire and everything else. Anyway, whatever. We're talking about toy robots. Let's leave the war out of it. Now, one thing, I did have to sand this down a little bit so it fits. So it's a little loose. I would say don't go as far as I did, but I'll thicken that up a little bit in time. But I digress as usual. Point is, I think he looks amazing, and I'm really glad I got him. I will say he's very expensive, and, you know, objectively speaking, completely not worth $100+ that it takes to get him in most cases. It's a nice figure, it's a solid figure, but I mean it doesn't blow you away, and I think for most collectors you're not really going to find a justification to spend the amount of money that it takes to get this guy, throw repro labels on him to get him up to par. I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. But having said that, that's not what this game is about. I really enjoy this figure. I'm glad I got him, and he fits perfect in my strange collection. So, yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the subject. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of it. And everybody take care until next time.